The SportsGrid network, because yes, Craig, it looks like we've got ourselves a lot of Major League Baseball here today. Will the Red Sox actually ever lose a game the rest of the way? It seems to be a big question here. Yankees and Pirates already rained out. They've got a doubleheader for tomorrow. You mix in that, I think now T-minus 40 days and counting until college football season begins, which means the NFL was just around the corner. And of course, we all woke up today still wondering, where will the king land? Is it Cleveland? Is it Miami? And you and I are both in Miami, so we know that, and I cannot believe they keep wanting to hear that it's going to be Pat Riley's final swan song, that he's going to put Giannis and LeBron on the same team together. I'll believe it when I see it, but right now in a lot of the markets, as you can see there, yeah, the favorite is that he comes back to Miami, and I don't know for the life of me, Craig, what kind of response the Miami Heat fans, the diehards, will actually give LeBron after he left us high and dry all those years ago.
Good to see you, Joe. Good to have you back here, and great to be with you here tonight as we go through some baseball games and get you ready for the evening slate. I do want to thank you because we're a minute and 46 seconds in, and I was waiting for you to ask me about the Marlins losing streak. You did not do that, so I want to thank you for that. I thought we were going to start off there, but this is why we work together so well. Yeah, as far as LeBron is concerned, you know, I am in agreement with you. I think this whole thing is really bizarre, and this is the first time in a while where, Joe, in the last 6 months with prediction markets, maybe last year, and odds have been moved by media. Joe, this feels like his next destination has been moved by media more than anything that I can remember ever. Like Dan Le Batard does an interview with Pat Riley, the thing on Polymarket and Kalshi goes to 60%. It's very strange to me, because if we've learned anything from LeBron James, it's we've learned to expect the unexpected, Joe. I talked about this on the show yesterday. When you and I were living here in South Florida and he opted to pick Miami and ended up leaving Cleveland, we were stunned at that time. We weren't sure that it was going to be Miami. Then he stunned everybody by leaving Miami and going to Cleveland. Then he stunned everybody by leaving Cleveland and go to LA. So, look, I don't have any answer to this, but my guess is expect the unexpected. Find a team that you can bet or put a prediction market wager in and pick somewhere else, because that's what this guy has done through the years. He's picked somewhere where we didn't expect. That's what I expect to happen. You mentioned him playing on the same court as Giannis. I mean, how about Bam Adebayo too? Like, is there enough balls to go around there on that team for those three? I mean, this is not like Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron James. So I'm curious with you. I don't know that we're going to get to anything anytime soon. So my focus has tended to be baseball here in the last 24, 48 hours, because you know, and I know, and you hit it at the top, 40 days from college football. That's true, but we don't hear a ton about training camp in college football. Get ready to get inundated next week with NFL training camp talk and then the Hall of Fame game in less than 2 weeks, Joe.
Kind of crazy here. And I'll tell you this, the prediction markets and markets like LeBron James, keep in mind, they're completely narrative driven. The market moves depending on the headline of that particular day. So if you happen to know there's an article coming out about LeBron James, maybe in Cleveland, he's about to do an interview or a podcast, I would jump on the Cleveland side of things, because the repricing is going to happen. It doesn't matter where it lands. It just matters that you got in at the right price before that next article or headline comes about. Let's not forget, we got a trade deadline still in Major League Baseball too here, Craig, which, you know, we always say this every year. It's like, oh boy, get ready. Teams are going to load up. And then usually, inevitably, the trade deadline comes and goes. And we're like, that really wasn't what I thought it was going to be. There aren't really big names that move the needle you're expecting this trade deadline, is there?
I think the 2024 trade deadline lived up to the billing. There were like 40 trades or something like that. So not to defend the deadline, but 2 years ago, we did have a monster one. Last year, not as much. I don't know what we're going to get this year, Joe. There's a lot of factors playing into this thing. They say the collective bargaining agreement is the main factor. I think that's the second factor. I think the main factor of all, Joe, is you have 23 teams that are still alive for the playoffs in Major League Baseball. How do you figure out how those 23 teams are going to poach guys from the 7 teams that are not? Like, it's impossible. Everyone's going to be fighting each other for those players. So what does that mean? It means we still will have a trade deadline. It means those 7 teams, maybe 8, maybe 9 by the time this goes off in a week and a half, maybe there'll be more trades. But it also means this, Joe, it's going down to the last minute. If you're one of these teams, why would you take an offer now on any player when you have 20, 22 organizations that are willing to play this right down to the wire? So I know we want action in this industry. We want fun. I remember when, when everyone was saying Giannis had to get traded at the deadline, he has to, or they're going to lose their leverage. Remember that? Why? Because we want transactions. We want to come on a show like this and talk about it. Get the bleep out of here. They opened up the door to every team in the NBA as soon as the season ended, and the Heat gave them the best offer. A lot of times, the best offers in sports come in the offseason because you simply don't know who's going to be in, Joe, who's going to be out. Who's to say? I'll give you a team. Who's to say, Joe, next year that the Cincinnati Reds don't want to spend $200 million? Do you know? Do I know? No. I don't know. So why wouldn't they wait? Why wouldn't some teams wait until the end of the season to make those sort of things? But, Luis Arias of the Giants is a player that I would almost assure you will be dealt. The Mets will have some players to be traded. The A's will. The Rockies will. And then, Joe, we're starting to get thin here. Like, at that point, who's in, who's out? I think that's predominantly the reason you're going to see very little until August the 2nd or August the 3rd.
Well, I think it depends on who considers themselves still alive, who are sellers, who are buyers. And I think the team at the top is Detroit. What are you, Detroit? You've been playing much better baseball over the last month that you got a little bit healthier, but are you trading Skubal at the deadline? Half the time you hear, yes, Skubal's going to wear a different uniform. Half the time you hear, no. What about Mize? Is Mize in a long-term play? There are some teams, I don't know, Greg, and maybe this is because parity is running rampant, or maybe, like you said, maybe teams are just saying, you know what, with the looming lockout possibly coming up, maybe nobody's a seller at this point. But I think a lot of this is all going to come down to figuring out which teams are saying, you know what, now's the time to hit the reset button and move on. Because if Detroit is one of them, that's a team there's a lot of teams going to be calling and trying to make moves.
Right. But Joe, that's a great point. Think about it if you're Detroit right now. What is the advantage of doing a deal now? None. Right. You may as well wait right until the last second, until you have to make that deal. No one wants to hear it, because they think that people like us just want to, hype things up or get clicks. I'm giving you the reality of the situation. The Tigers' best course of action is to wait until 5:59 Eastern time on trade deadline day to make a deal. Now, if you want my opinion on this, I think the Tigers will look in the mirror and they'll play 500 ball over the next 10 days, and I think that they will trade Skubal at the deadline. I do, and I think it's going to be a tough deal for Detroit. It'll be a tough deal for their fans, but it is the right deal to make. They're not a good team, and maybe they're a little bit above average. They can look at Cleveland, Joe, and point to the Guardians and say, hey, that team won 10 games in a row and ended up beating us in September, and say, why can't we be the same team? They're not. They're not that good. Not. So I would anticipate it, but let's not get excited about it until 5:59 Eastern on trade deadline day, because that's when they're going to decide whether, they'll decide a couple days before that they're going to do it, but they're not going to make that trade until they absolutely have to at the last minute. But I do think he'll be moved, and when he's pitching for the Dodgers in a few weeks, you'll be very excited to see him pitching in LA as well.
Blasphemous, just blasphemous that you had to come out with that there.
I'll tell you
this, though, there are some names that were floated around that will not be moved, and a lot of those, of course, are on the Boston Red Sox as they refuse to lose here, and they've got another one coming up here tonight, the Cardiac Kids, as they say. Will they or won't they continue to win? We'll break them down for you as Game Time Decisions continues on the Grid.
Come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list than only, 8% right now on Kalshi. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of get in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. Like, I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help
I
it.
knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on this Tuesday now, July the 21st. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish as, August 3rd trade deadline around the corner for Major League Baseball. Who's a seller? Who's a buyer? A lot of questions up in the air, but I can tell you this, and we were just talking about it, Craig, one team that was definitely a month ago, we were guaranteed selling with guys like Duran, would they be on Contreras, Sonny Gray, all the Boston Red Sox felt like were up for grabs a month ago. Not so much anymore because, they just refused to lose, and now they find themselves a couple of games over 500, right in the thick of it here in the American League. You want to talk about going from selling to buying. What's the big turnaround besides, sweeping the Yankees after that disaster and then heading into the All-Star break and winning again coming out of it? What's the big turnaround with Boston here, you think?
A few players getting really hot all at the right time. I think that's part of it. Their pitching is getting deeper into games. Willie Abreu is one of those players that he was player of the month or player of the week, I believe, last week. And he has just been red hot. So that's part of it. It is a little surprising because they've had injuries too. I left them for dead. I thought it was over with the Red Sox, but they basically right now are hitting the cover off the ball, as you see there, averaging almost 6 runs a game, 22 home runs during this streak. I mean, that's a very big number too. And they're getting pretty decent pitching. So eventually this is going to end. And my guess is after this hot streak is over, Joe, they go back to being maybe a 500 team. So I'm not sure if that gets them in the playoffs or not, but they will definitely, I would say, stay in the mix if they can. And you also have to wonder if their interim manager, Chad Tracy, has earned a shot to manage the team next season, because I thought that we probably thought a couple weeks ago that the Red Sox could start looking for a new manager now, but that is not the case. So I don't see them passing up Tampa, and I really don't see them passing up the Yankees. So it would be that final wild card spot I think that they would have their best shot at, because I don't see them winning the division. And for whatever reason, Tampa Bay, Joe, they have had a really hard time winning on the road, but the second they walk into Tropicana Field, they win like 6-1 every game. So I think Yankees and Rays are both getting in.
I think that's a good call, too. And the Red Sox, listen, tonight they're going to have the young arm, I believe, on the mound for them here. But their starting pitching is a big reason why, in addition to scoring almost 6 runs a game during this 14-game winning streak. But the starting pitching, Craig, 2.63 ERA. The bullpen, a 1.15 ERA during this 14-game winning streak. They're getting it done on all three levels, and they're stealing some bases, playing some defense, and well, that's how you can make up a lot of ground rather quickly here. But it feels like, is that starting rotation one? Because they don't even have their lead guy available to them here at this point.
Yeah, look, I think a healthy Ranger Suarez and Sonny Gray is definitely good enough to keep them in the mix. And if you've noticed, some of the Cy Young markets and prediction markets for Cy Young now include Sonny Gray, Joe. How about that? I mean, that's that's something I saw coming too. But he's stabilized that rotation, and he has been great. And Suarez is a really good pitcher too. But you see Eduardo Rivera pitching tonight. Look, this is not a pitcher that you're going to expect if they're fighting for the postseason that they would have in their rotation. They'd find somebody else. Yep. I mean, Boston's another tough call here at the deadline because you can't ignore the first 3.5 months of the season. You can't do it, or 4 months. You really can't. And I just don't know that the Red Sox are good enough to go far. But from a betting perspective, it was funny. We had George Kurtz on yesterday, Joe, and he said, look, I don't care who the Red Sox are playing. I don't care what time they're playing, and I don't care when. Until the streak ends, I'm betting them every day. And that's kind of the way to go about it, I think, in baseball. When you have a team that's hot, you just keep riding it and riding it and riding it until the wheels fall off. Remember the Cardinals won like 21 games in a row a few years ago. Of course, the A's did famously too. Cleveland, when a team gets hot, you just got to get out of the way. So I would expect the Red Sox win again today. I really do. I think they're going to keep this going.
Now, Suarez was scheduled to come off the 15-day injured list and pitch tonight, but it looks like they might be going with an opener here at this point. I don't know whether whether or not he'll come in after that, but he was on the IL there for 15 days, so with a groin injury. But the fact that they'll have him back is fantastic. And Bradish, by the way, guys, don't get crazy. 1-6 against this Red Sox team in 10 career starts. It's another season, and the Baltimore Orioles, shockingly enough, Craig Mish, aren't living up to expectations. Does that not feel that just feels like rinse and repeat every year with them, does it not?
Yeah, that's been disappointing, and a lot of folks feel that they just have never attacked the pitching market outside of that 1/2 season where they got Corbin Burns, if you remember, and then Burns pitched with them, and he pitched so well. And then it was supposed to be like a foregone conclusion that he would return to Baltimore. He ended up going to Arizona. He's been out. I think Burns could come back, by the way, from Tommy John at some point this season for the Diamondbacks, but I digress. Yeah, that's been the deal. They got Trevor Rogers from Miami. He turned out to be an absolute star for the Orioles last season, had a really tough start this year. The Orioles, Joe, always have enough hitting. They always seem to be able to put up 4 or 5 runs a game. They add Pete Alonso, but it's been the pitching. But different conversation we're having with them. I know they lost to Boston, but they were riding a 7-game winning streak and put themselves ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays. So the Orioles are under some pressure to win, and I'm guessing that they probably will hold pat or maybe even add at the deadline as well. Do I believe in them? Not with that rotation, no. But I think the Orioles, when they're under this kind of pressure, and their manager is, and their general manager is, it's not that you have to basically go back and convince the owner, hey, look, we want to stay in this thing. We want to add, or at the very least, we want to keep what we have.
Yeah, well, listen, everybody feels that it's just the Dodgers world, and, we're just happy to be a part of it until the postseason comes. Wasn't their world last night in Philadelphia. Philly coming back with Zach Wheeler on the mound here. Wroblewski going for the Dodgers quietly. Having a season that I don't think all the underlying numbers tell me he's a gas can waiting to be lit, and yet he's 10-2 with a 2.69 ERA, and all they do is win games when he's on the mound. We've got something to talk about with that game. That's one of the early games coming up, by the way. Also, a team that just won't go away, the Guardians, and the crafty lefty who Craig saw a little bit of here recently in Miami, Parker Messick. I think the kid is phenomenal. He's kind of a throwback, old school guy. He's on the mound. Guardians looking to get it done again here tonight against the Twins. Those are a couple of your early starts that we'll dive into. And then, of course, are the Mets sellers? Of course they are. And they're going to lose again tonight. We'll explain why as Game Time Decisions continues.
Come in a lot lot more better prepared to play than say we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list than only, 8% right now on call sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. Like, I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help
I
it.
knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Hey, Ray.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. We got a loaded slate. One game already postponed. Yankees and Pirates will start a doubleheader tomorrow as that interleague matchup has been canceled. But the fun will begin in Philadelphia at Citizens Bank. Double-digit winds blowing straight out to center field. I don't know if that's going to matter with Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies, but Roleski does not strike out and miss a lot of bats, but he gives up a ton of weak contact. I don't understand his numbers, Craig. I get that the Dodgers are going to give you run support, which is always fun, but it just feels like for a guy that doesn't strike anybody out, at some point that weak contact turns into solid contact. He's a fly ball pitcher with 15-mile-an-hour winds at Citizens Bank, but are the Phillies going to be good enough to be able to take advantage of him? And we see some of that regression tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's usually a 5 or 6 inning pitcher, and so you're going to be dealing with a lot of bullpen action in LA. He reminds me a lot, different pitcher, but Joe, he reminds me a lot a few years ago. Do you remember when LA had Kershaw? They had that incredible staff, and then they had this guy named Tony Gonsolin, and that guy won a million games and was like in the Cy Young conversation, and we couldn't figure out that guy. Like, how is this guy getting all those wins? And he made the All-Star team. I think it was 2022, and then we heard from him, 1 more or 2 more years, and he's gone. I kind of feel like that's the same thing with Robleski, so I could see him rolling off the rest of the season just like he is right now, man. Like, I don't know that will change, but look, Philadelphia, I think, has the advantage here. The question you ask yourself is, we asked the same thing last night, how many opportunities from now through the end of the season will you get the Dodgers at plus money? Less than 10, less than 8, less than 5, maybe? This is, again, one of those light nights where you probably could. And if you feel that strongly about them, they would go in that direction. For me, I do think the Phillies get through the first 5 here. My concern would be what would happen in the back end, because I do feel like LA is always a sleeping giant in the end. Wheeler's props tonight in terms of strikeouts, 6.5, over -132, under +104. Those are his numbers going into this evening's matchup.
Feels like a sneaky under, too, because you've got the public seeing 16 runs scored last night, 17 runs scored last night, the wind's blowing out. Oh, there's absolutely, be careful with that, even with that Philadelphia bullpen here. But that's going to kick off the festivities at 6:40. And then you've got the American League Central. I think they're going to be sellers. I think Joe Ryan's on the market. I think Jeffers is on the market. I think the Twins could be a big seller, but they're still at 49 and 52, Craig. They're still in it in the Central, which is true. The only team that's really out of it is the Royals there, I guess. But the Guardians looking to get it done with Parker Messick, who you watched firsthand there against the Marlins before the All-Star break. And again, doesn't miss a ton of bats, but he makes you swing at his pitches. And he is good, man. I mean, I've been nothing but impressed with him this year.
Yeah, more than a crafty lefty. I don't think that you would designate him as that. He's more than that. And he does strike a few guys out in the process, too. And we saw that he made the All-Star team. Very impressive there. But I am kind of with you on the Twins. I do think that they went into the season kind of thinking to themselves, can we finish with 75 wins? Is that the high mark? And right now, you look at their pace without doing anything, that's kind of where they are. So I think they join the ranks of those teams that fall out of it. But you're right, Joe. They've stayed in it. And by the way, they didn't have Byron Buxton for about a week and a half, and they were winning games without him too, which was kind of strange as well. But it just shows you how weak that division is, with Cleveland leading the way and Cleveland winning all these games without Jose Ramirez too. So a very bizarre season just all around in baseball, one that I can't remember in a long time, having so many teams all bunched up outside of really LA, Milwaukee, Atlanta, and maybe Tampa Bay and New York a little bit, but really everybody is kind of bunched up outside of the Dodgers. I think it'd be fair to say, Joe, that going into the wild card and going into the NLDS and ALDS, you won't be surprised if any team beats another going into the postseason outside of the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I mean, here the Twins are, deadline coming up, and they're 3 games out of that final wild card spot. Yet they're on a losing streak in which they have been outscored 29-7. They got crushed by the Cubs. They got, again, yesterday, Joe Ryan gave up 6 home runs in 4 innings. I think that tied some sort of modern day record. And you're right. The Guardians, head scratcher. They got one of the best closers in the game. They're a team that, again, small ball. They do a lot of the little things right. And boy, they're starting to hit, and Ramirez on his way back. So once he gets back into the swing of things, going to be very interesting here as the Guardians look to take another step here tonight on pushing the Twins down there in the Central, and they want to maintain their lead. So a lot more Major League Baseball coming up. Loaded slate here tonight, and we've got you covered as Game Time Decisions continues on the Grid.
Come in a lot more better prepared to play than say we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Kalshi. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Skubal. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish here as we are getting you ready for what should be a great night here in Major League Baseball. A lot of games on the card here today. Again, just one already canceled there, postponed rather. Doubleheader coming up tomorrow between the Yankees and the Pirates. And I was looking forward to that game here tonight there, Craig, because the Yankees finally put it together offensively against what I thought was one of the better pitchers on the Pirates and Ashcraft. But, you know, the big question, I was fully prepared to go against them tonight because there's no way I am buying their ability to be able to hit like they did last night in back-to-back games, even against Bubba Chandler. But you look at the numbers, and there is with Aaron Judge and without Aaron Judge. And it's the most amazing thing. One guy completely changes the entire dynamic of that lineup. And you've got to wonder, because I'm still not hearing any positive signs like, oh, he'll be back. Are the Yankees going to be big buyers in the trade deadline? We know they've got the money. Whether they want to spend it is a whole different world, but they need something in that line. They have to make a move, don't they, Craig?
They always do. They're not a stand pat team. We know that, and they'll end up adding something. What, I can't really say for sure, but look, I mean, where would they be without Ben Rice? I mean, that guy's had an incredible season thus far. Jazz is getting hot here, maybe at the right time. And the other player, too, that we don't hear a ton about, Joe, and maybe he's just a postseason player at this point, is Giancarlo Stanton. Maybe they're just happy with that guy coming back in September and getting his, 5 plate appearances and not playing the field at all. Maybe that's just what the deal is. And maybe that's what they're hoping for Aaron Judge, is just for him to come back in September and have a little bit of a pseudo spring training and get healthy in time for October. So we'll see. But yeah, I would expect the Yankees to make some moves, and maybe we'll learn more about what they do or don't do, which will tell us about the health of Aaron Judge moving forward. I would not anticipate seeing him at least for another 3-4 weeks, even if he is healthy, because that's how long it takes through coming back and rehab assignments and imaging and everything else. So I still think we're far away from that, but their pitching is definitely good enough, which is rare for the Yankees. Usually that's what they're adding at this time of the season, but they may need an extra bat or two to get through to the end of the postseason. But I do think they will cruise towards some sort of berth, whether it's wild card or a division win.
They're going to do something here. Otherwise, it'll be interesting. Cashman's always got a lot of questions to answer on what he is or is not going to do, but the numbers don't lie. With Judge, they're one team. Without him, they are a completely other team. So we'll see what the Yankees do, if anything, but they've got a doubleheader now. Tomorrow, that other team in New York, well, they got the Brewers tonight here, and they are just hoping anything goes well. This young kid, Thornton, on the mound, taking on Brandon Sproat, and you want to talk about just not what they thought it was going to be. The Mets are just, I can't explain it. Was this team just not as good as people thought it was going to be? Have they just been injury related? Peralta hasn't exactly done it. I don't know. What is it with the Mets this year?
Just a poor roster construction. I think anybody would look at that and say that that's what the deal is, when they thought Polanco was going to be at first and Bichette was going to be fine at third. And, Soto and Lindor, do they get along? Do they not get along? Who really knows in the end? The pitching was just okay. Confluence of events for me with the Mets, and they're realizing now that maybe the devil they knew, having Nimmo and having Alonso and having Edwin Diaz, maybe that was the way to go. Win your 85 games, maybe don't make the postseason, as opposed to losing 95 games, which is what they could do if they end up trading a lot of players. So, Joe, look, they'll trade any expiring contract. They'll try to move some others. Moving a guy like, I don't think Lindor and Soto will both be on the Mets next season. I don't know how they figure that out. But Lindor, to me, by the way, everyone's looking at Lindor as a declining player, and he's been hurt. Take a look at the season he had last year. He was amazing for the New York Mets. He was like an MVP candidate. So, if I was another team, I would be buying that. I would be looking in the Mets saying, hey, look, we understand we owe this guy another 5 years and $150 million. You eat some, we'll eat some, and we'll take the guy. I think Lindor can help a team and revitalize his career. I wouldn't give up on him as well. But as far as the Mets season is concerned, they decided to go defense first, added Simeon and some of those other players, Joe, it just was a disaster. It did not work out, and they're not going to rebuild, but they're definitely going to be under a lot of pressure to win next year for sure, because there's no chance that you can post a $300 million payroll like the Mets did and lose 1 year, and then regardless of what the CBT, the collective bargaining agrees to next year, cap floor, etc., Mets are going to have to win next year for sure.
Yeah, former Brewer Freddie Peralta last night. They didn't welcome him. Sorry, Freddie. Gave up 7 runs there in 5
hasn't been good
third.
at all.
Amazing, right? So then you got to wonder. Well, listen, the Brewers. Everyone thought nobody had the Brewers at 63 wins at this point in the season. Everybody thought the Brewers. This was the time that they take a step back. Maybe the Cardinals. Except Craig was the only one here on this network before the season started that said, don't sell the Cardinals short. Don't sell the Brewers short. These are organizations that are well run. You look at it on paper and you're going, well, Woodruff was hurt to start the year. Peralta's already gone now. You weren't sure what Miz was going to be or not going to be. And yet here they are with 63 wins, beating up the lowly Mets. And they're doing it, Craig, I think, with one of the team with the fewest home runs in Major League Baseball, which is just amazing to me. But they do everything else very well, Milwaukee. And it's funny that if you catch the ball, throw the ball, don't make errors, don't walk a ton of guys, you don't have to hit home runs. It appears that you can actually win games 4-1 all day long.
Yeah, I did not like the Cardinals, so let me clear that up. I'm totally wrong on them. I did not think the Cardinals were going to be this good by any stretch of the imagination, but Weatherholt and Walker, those two guys absolutely came alive out of nowhere, and that has led them to the position that they're in. But on Milwaukee, this is kind of, I'm not that surprised, but, with Milwaukee, Joe, it always feels like if you watch their games, it's the race to 3 runs. If the Brewers get 3 runs, or let alone 4, they're winning that game. Like, that's it. Because their pitchers are going to pitch 6 innings, and then Ashby's going to come in the 7th, and then Uribe is going to come in the 8th, and then McGill is going to come in the 9th. And these are not the sexiest names in baseball, but look at the stats. They don't blow games.
Yep.
And then on top of it, Joe, so many nights, if you watch the Brewers, they're down 2-1 in the 7th. Oh, maybe the other team's going to win. Nope. They tie it in the 8th. They walk off in the 9th. I think they have the best record in baseball after the 7th inning when they're either tied or losing. So what does that tell you? They just have the guts. Great manager in Pat Murphy. I don't know how they do it. I'm with you. I mean, Jake Bauers is their cleanup hitter, I mean, the guy seems like he strikes out every time he's up, but somehow at the end of the year, he's going to have 25 home runs. So very well-run organization. The other part about them, too, is that, Joe, they just call up these pitchers and instantly there's 6 innings, 2 earned runs every single night. I don't even know how they do it. By the way, there was a piece of news with the Brewers today. They announced that Jacob Mizorowski, who only threw 4 innings yesterday, isn't going to pitch this weekend. They're going to give him another start off to give him some more rest. So I think it's fair to say with the Miz, if you're holding tickets to win Cy Young with him, I think you got to hedge a little bit and go with someone else. There's a lot of smoke here. I don't know if fire's coming, but a lot of smoke with this guy right now.
Well, and we saw those numbers a couple of weeks ago. We looked at them, Greg, and it was just Skeens was going through it. There were questions about how many games Ohtani was actually even going to pitch in the second half, and the answer is likely not many, with an 11.5 game lead over the Diamondbacks and the Padres, who are just can't seem to put it together. And he all of a sudden was, 72% chance of winning the Cy Young in the National League. But I still think Wheeler has got, might have a say with that. I think there's a couple of guys. Sale as well, and what Burns, even from the Reds, having a tremendous season. So we'll see how much longer it goes. But I think we're at that part of the year where you got a 7-game lead over the Cubs, 11.5 over the Cardinals. Ohtani's knee, if you don't have to pitch Ohtani the rest of the way, Craig, I'm okay with that. Are you? I mean, I'm all right if he doesn't have to pitch until September.
I think that's exactly it. I think that's what's going down here. And then the Dodgers will add a pitcher. They will next week or the week after. Ohtani probably, what is he, your closer in October? Probably.
Yeah.
They come in a lot more better better prepared to play than say we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Kalshi. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help
I
it.
knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network, and we've got some updates for you here. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. Rain and Mother Nature playing a big role in what's going on here tonight. We told you Yankees and Pittsburgh were already postponed earlier. They have a doubleheader set tomorrow in the Bronx. Now we're learning Baltimore and Boston has also been postponed tonight, so the streak will have to wait. Doubleheader scheduled for tomorrow. Rain now, 80% chance in Philadelphia. So the whole eastern side here, it looks like, Craig, might find themselves at least under delays. And Boston and Baltimore, doubleheader makes it even a little bit more difficult tomorrow here. Doubleheaders this time of year in the summer, it makes all of a sudden those rotations a little trickier to navigate, no?
I think that's a really interesting point, because I think, Joe, tomorrow we're going to see probably that winning streak come to an end for the Red Sox, and it may not even be their fault.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to sweep a doubleheader. So I think that their streak, either in the first game or second game, probably comes to a close tomorrow for the Red Sox here.
Not good. Postpones. Yankees, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Boston. Keep an eye on the Philly and Dodger game. That's coming up in just about 60 minutes from now. At least that's the scheduled start there. What are you making here, Craig, of the Atlanta Braves here, who you think just started the year in April and May, and we talked, and it was like, oh boy, they're going to win 100 some odd games. They're going to run away with the National League East. And then all of a sudden June and July hit, and then they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. They brought the Phillies back into it, who were struggling early on. But they're another sneaky team that at the trade deadline usually does what they have to do. They're not crazy over-the-top names, but they usually make the moves necessary to make a run at this. My problem is, did they peak too early? Did we already get the best of what Atlanta was in April and May? We've seen that many, many times over the years, where teams they don't play their best baseball. Well, they play it, and they play it too soon in the season here. What's your prediction on the Braves moving forward?
Yeah, very similar to what they did a few years ago when they lost Acuna, and then they added Soler, who won the MVP of the World Series. They added Adam Duvall. I think that they're going to end up doing something similar there. And also, earlier today. I think the game started or maybe over, but Ronald Acuna Jr., I believe, played his last rehab game at Gwinnett tonight. So he's going to end up rejoining the lineup. He's been out for a month or more again. Also in that lineup, Joe, was a guy they signed in the offseason who's, I mean, I don't even know if he's hurt or not, but Ha-Seong Kim, remember that? Remember they gave him that money?
Yes.
And he's been horrible for the Braves. You know who else is in the Braves minor league lineup tonight? Kind of sad. Andrew McCutchen is playing in AAA right now for the Atlanta Braves. He's in that. Not that he's going to contribute anything at the big league level, but those kind of players, the McCutchens, like wouldn't it seem to you, Joe, like I thought of a name if the Braves would acquire who could help them maybe win a World Series? The name that came to mind to me was George Springer. Doesn't it seem like he's the perfect guy to go to Atlanta? Braves make a trade with the Blue Jays. His contract's about up, and Springer ends up being amazing and helps them win the world. I think it's that kind of guy who's at the back end of his career, 1-year deal, and maybe finds himself in another uniform next year and beyond. But Alex Anthopoulos is very good with this. The only thing that you'd have to ask yourself, Joe, is if they don't get any more pitching, do they have enough? Because they've lost Schwellen back and forth with injuries. They lost Strider again with an injury. Do they have enough to even get through this? I'm not sure. That's the question that I would have.
Well, I got to tell you, Bryce Elder going, 6 innings last night. That bullpen has been getting worked. And it's been Iglesias in the back end. That's been one of the best bullpens in the National League all year long. And it has really saved them, especially when they weren't scoring any runs here over the last month and a half. But that bullpen is rested here tonight. And we know what the Padres bullpen, the back end, is all about. Both bullpens, at least the high leverage arms, got the night off last night. We didn't have to see Mason Miller. We didn't have to see Iglesias. So tonight is a little different story. Right to your point, Reynaldo Lopez is the guy that they're turning to here in hopes of being able to solidify the middle of that rotation. And what about the Padres? I thought Sears pitched well last night, certainly good enough to win, but now it's Walker Buehler on the mound for him here tonight. So I guess those bullpens better be rested here. No, Craig?
They are. And with the Padres, I just, Joe, I've watched them play. It doesn't seem like these Padres I've seen in the last 10 years. I don't like this team. I don't know. There's something missing. Where is Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish? That's Joe Musgrove. Where is that stopper for them? That may not be an ace on some team, but he's like the ace of the Padres, and he ends up doing very well. They don't have that. Their hitting hasn't been good. That's taken a big step back, of course, from Manny Machado. It's been documented the season that he's having also. I don't get the same feeling on the Padres. We know that now that Mason Miller's name is coming up as far as trades concerned. This poor guy is like the best closer ever. He goes from the A's to the Padres, maybe gets traded again 3 times. Still a young player. I think the Padres probably are going to be on the outside looking in this year, Joe. I actually like Arizona more than I like San Diego. I think the Diamondbacks have a better shot than them.
Yeah, I agree. And the Diamondbacks usually wait until, another week or so before they really start playing their best baseball.
They always have.
Brendan Pfaadt, always. And it's under the radar kind of ads where you're going, yeah. And they always end up showing up and being there in the end and making a run for it here. And some teams just, I guess, better late than never. They're going to be out on the West Coast here again tonight against the Athletics. Perkins versus the young guy Drake in that one. The Athletics just had way too many injuries here. They can't hit their way out of a paper bag right now. And to your point, the Diamondbacks are exactly the kind of team that will feast on a lineup like the Athletics are rolling out there right now.
Yeah, and I was surprised Arizona had a nice opportunity last night, and they didn't do it. The A's, to me, are playing the worst baseball of anybody in the big leagues over the last month or so. Arizona, Joe's got to win these next 2 games in this series. You cannot come away from a home series with the A's and lose twice, so I would expect to bounce back there.
2,000th hit for Nolan Arenado last night for Arizona. 14-year Major League Baseball career. Will he get to 3? Absolutely not. He won't. But doesn't mean that Arizona will not win a game here tonight. We got much more to get to here. Plenty more Major League Baseball news and notes as Game Time Decisions continues here on. All right, welcome back in. Here we go. Game time decisions on the SportsGrid Network as we round out this first hour together. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. Plenty of Major League Baseball action. Unfortunately, Mother Nature playing a role on the slate here tonight. Couple games already postponed. Doubleheaders tomorrow, Boston and Baltimore, as well as the Yankees and Pittsburgh. We do have a trade deadline coming up here. A ton of teams could be looking to move guys on expiring contracts and some big names. But will any of that come to fruition? And will any of it happen prior to, I don't know, let's say right up until the last 5 minutes of the trade deadline on August 3rd? Because your point earlier, Craig, I think is a great one here. You don't know what's going to happen with the CBA, right? The negotiations are going on. There have been, at least they're talking. That's half the battle. But almost as if when you're talking about, if I'm looking to trade somebody's, like I am waiting until the very last minute to see maximum offers of what we get. Isn't this whole CBA going to be the same thing, Craig? Are we really going to get a deal before we absolutely have to get a deal until, I don't know, 24 hours prior to what opening day should have been? Because it feels like the same concept works with that as well.
Yeah, baseball is really good about just sticking to those deadlines. Nothing happens before they have to. That's the reason why there is a deadline, is because they won't use it unless there is a deadline. So with the CBA, look, I don't think there's any more insight now than there was back in April or May. Today we're seeing some stuff that the Players Association sent over regarding their proposal for what the draft is. I read through that a little bit. I could take it or leave it. I didn't think there was anything significant. The only thing I did agree with in the proposal was the draft, Joe, is a bizarre element to me, the baseball draft. And I'll just explain why real quick, since we were wrapping up this hour. Is that you've noticed, Joe, the last few years, out of nowhere, Major League Baseball's tried to make the draft more of a spectacle. It's not going to be the NBA, and it's not going to be the NFL, but they've had it as a standalone event in the All-Star City. They promoted it. It's been a really big deal. And why this year they chose, Joe, they went the other way completely. After all these years of promoting it, they had it in the afternoon on Saturday and Sunday while games were going on. I think a lot of people had no clue that the draft was last weekend. So the proposal, by the way, so what am I alluding to? They're proposing that this draft is done in June around the time of the College World Series. I think that's a much better idea. Let the College World Series end, draft whoever you want, and then at that point gives them some more time to get with the coast leagues, Florida Gulf Coast, or wherever they're going to play. If you get drafted in July and you don't sign until August, the season ends. You have nowhere to play until next year. So I'm on board with that. But, Joe, that was perplexing to me because I was in L.A. for the draft. I was in Texas. They had nice events. They invited the media out there. It was like a big party. The kids didn't show up, with the picks, and that's fine. But then this year, they do it where no one's even there, and it's in the middle of the day where games are going on a Saturday and Sunday. What the heck happened there? I have no idea.
Well, and front offices, to your point, Greg, they have hated this since it changed to the All-Star break, right, in 2021. The problem is all of a sudden the trade deadline, you come out of the draft and the All-Star break, now the trade deadline is coming, right? And front offices are running around like absolutely crazy. Where do you allocate resources? Who's doing what? What's going on? I think the whole thing, it's a classic case of if it wasn't broke, what were you fixing it for to begin with?
I agree.
And I don't know what they were thinking. Put it back. What is it? 20 rounds, I think, max. They did away with that years ago.
Yeah, in June.
And do it in June. Wait till
the season ends.
World Series.
Right.
Correct.
Wait till the College World Series ends, and a few weeks later, just like the rest of the leagues do it. It was a nice try by Major League Baseball to try and do what they did. Maybe they can find a way to make it supremely popular, have it at night. They have the lottery now, too. That's a big deal. But you are not going to be able to have this going on during the day against other games. Now, my understanding is maybe, Joe, the reason why they did it Saturday, Sunday and got it over with is because front offices, just like you said, are complaining, wait a second here. This is our all-star break. We don't have any game. You're going to make us do the draft during the break, like at the end here. So there's really no winning in the situation, but I do think it's a good idea. It doesn't even have to be right after the College World Series, but somewhere around the end of June. To me, yes, let's fix that problem.
Yeah, well, and it's shocking that they were able to get this out of the way, because we all know, Craig, every CBA, it all comes down to the fight over money, or how the league's revenue is going to be divided between the players and the team owners. And yeah, that's all again. Start fighting about that. The draft will figure itself out down the road. You're getting all the low-hanging fruit out of the way, which is great. Who was the first pick in the draft?
Who was the first pick, Joe? Yeah. Any clue? No. Yeah. No.
Exactly.
But Fernando Mendoza was the first pick in the draft. We know that.
Yeah.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list than only, 8% right now on Kalshi. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. Like, I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. Listen, I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network, off and running another hour together here. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish, as we've got a loaded slate of Major League Baseball action here tonight. Some good games coming up a little bit later this hour. Dodgers and the Phillies. Zach Wheeler on the mound as the Phillies look to continue their winning ways here. Took one against the Dodgers last night in that opening game of the series. They're going to look to do that again here tonight. A couple of games that are already rained out. Yankees and Pittsburgh, doubleheader tomorrow. Boston is putting that 14-game winning streak on hold. They're going to have a doubleheader coming up tomorrow. So we got a little something for everybody here. Trade deadline, Craig, coming up. Which is always fun. We were just talking last hour. A lot of what we keep talking about with Major League Baseball and trade deadlines and who's going to get the money and who's not. A lot of this all depends how the CBA negotiations even roll. In your heart of hearts, I likely don't think anything is getting done until February, March, somewhere along the lines. But is it safe to say that it's all going to come down to it? And I hate to make it this easy, but sometimes it is. There's no need to make it more difficult. It's all going to be about a salary cap, is it not? I mean, is that where the line is going to be drawn in the sand?
Yeah, 100%, Joe. You've been around a long time. You know how this is headed. And a floor, by the way, salary floor. So, I think that's where we are. I've said on this network, and I've said for many years that I've always been a players guy, and I've always backed everything that they've had to say, and I've always thought that the entertainment and where they put their bodies on the field, and everyone wants to see them. No one's interested in who owns a team. They want to see the players play. But this is the first time that I have switched. I have switched, and because quite frankly, I understand that a lot of different teams win the playoffs, and a lot of different teams potentially can win the World Series. But I just think the haves and the have-nots, the disparity now, Joe, it's much bigger than it ever has been. And however they end up fixing it, I think it needs to be fixed. And I do think that a cap and a floor would help that, Joe. If the minimum that you had to spend was $100 or $150 million, you're talking about 10 teams that are going to have to increase the payroll, Joe, by about $60-70 million next season. That's a lot. And all you're doing is taking down a few teams from spending what they normally would. I think it would give an opportunity for a lot of teams to not just make the playoffs, but to win. And unfortunately, I don't agree with the player sentiment that they say that it doesn't work in the other sports. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, the Green Bay Packers have won Super Bowls. The Oklahoma City Thunder is winning NBA championships. So for me, I'm in on that. And again, I'm a little jaded. I'm in a market where the spending isn't going to be what it is on some of the other teams, at least currently, because of the revenue that's made here locally. But I am for it, and I hope that it ends up happening. But I understand the players' side. They don't want to be capped. They've never had one. Why should they have to have one? What I hope happens here, Joe, is that cooler heads prevail, and the majority of Major League Baseball's players are not making Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani type money. They're not, and they're going to be, and the lower guys are going to be making a lot more money with this new deal. A lot more money.
Right.
The lower guys get helped out a lot. So imagine a scenario, Joe, where there's a cap and a floor, and baseball's free agency hits, and in the first 48 hours, everyone's signing. And here are the Pirates signing major guys, and Tampa Bay signing major guys, and Miami, and all of these teams clamoring to sign, like the Jaguars, like how that free agency starts and Jacksonville's in, and they sign some guy that we've never heard of probably for like $70 million. But in that league, you got to do it. I think the same thing hopefully will come to Major League Baseball. But you said it best. Like, that's really what it's about. As far as when they'll play, I'm obviously, I have a lot of vested interest in this, including a job. So I am going to hope that the season just starts on time, Joe. I will take that. That would be good enough for me.
The thing that drives me crazy about it, Greg, and we all remember, if you're old enough to remember, the last time we had to go through this in 94 was it when the my last chance,
that was a horrible one. I hope it's not like 94.
That was awful, because that was the last time Mattingly and the Yankees in Seattle, and they
stopped the season in the middle.
Gone. That was it. Completely shut it down, and really thought, and this was the big thing, right? Because at that time, Greg, there were a lot less distractions going on, and even then, people were done with Major League Baseball, saying, I'm done with all of this. And even knowing that history, they just kept kicking this can down the road. We knew this was coming. This was eventually going to have to come to a head. A decision was going to be made, but they just kept kicking this can down a road. In your opinion, this is the end of the road. Somebody has got to draw the line in the sand here. And then the question is, if there is any sort of prolonged law, is Major League Baseball in a worse position? Cal Ripken ain't walking through that door. We're not having Sammy, so we're not hitting 70 home runs. That is not happening here. There's too much else going on to occupy people's attention with. Out of sight, out of mind. I mean, that's a pretty big issue, is it not?
Yeah. Look, of course it is, and look, and baseball also has big TV deal and streaming rights out there that's going to help, and playoff money, potential ads. So I just hope that they all look at this money that could be coming to both sides and say, let's just make sure that we get it done. But look, I think we are headed for a brawl and a lockout of some kind. But I'm going to be optimistic here and hope that something happens in February and March. And boy, it just seems like the players are so dug in on no cap and no floor, and the owners are so dug in on cap and floor. Like, is there middle ground to be made there? And what is it? Like, I don't know, but I'm hopeful, man. I can't sit here and say that I'm going to be negative about it. I am realistic about it. I know on Kalshi or Polymarket, I think they've posted dates of December 3rd or something like that. I mean, there's no way I would bet on that. Like, I think it goes beyond that. But look, at that time, we'll be locked into football. I'll be following.
Yep.
But the good thing is that no one is going to be possessed with this stuff until after January. When January comes around and the Super Bowl comes around, if they still don't have a deal, then all of a sudden the black eye begins again for Major League Baseball. But I think that they can get away with this until like February without having anything significant. Because look, everyone's going to be watching. I mean, college football was incredible last year with the playoffs, and the NFL season just drives the bus. You know how that works in sports. So, and the NBA will be going on too. Everybody like, okay. But Joe, pitchers and catchers not reporting this year. All of a sudden, what? That's when it'll hit.
Different ball game. And again, this isn't 94 where we'll win them back. You know, you are at the pinnacle right now. This is maybe the best resurgence in popularity that Major League Baseball has had in a very, very long. There is a lot for all parties to lose here. So hopefully cooler heads prevail,
Joe,
and we won't have this. They'll get to it.
Wouldn't you say it's fair? Look, I'm always not objective when I'm always partial when it comes to this. But would you, as somebody who is more impartial than me, would you say now that baseball has repassed the NBA as the second most popular sport? Because I do believe, I don't think anyone's close to the NFL, by the way. And by the way, I don't think baseball or basketball are even close to college football. But to me, like I consider college football a separate league. So for me, in terms of popularity, this is what I have. I've got the NFL number one, far and away. And then I've got a tier of two where college football is not near the NFL, but so far away from everybody else. And then I've got everybody else. But I do have baseball 3. I got baseball 3 ahead of the NBA.
And I think a lot of that has to do with baseball has done a tremendous job of marketing their stars finally over the last 5 years. And it helps when you got guys like Ohtani and Judge and big names. But they were the worst sport when it came to marketing their stars of them all. They've done a much better job, and I think that coincides with the popularity. We got more, though, as Game Time Decisions continues on the...
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, you know, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Kalshi. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. Like, I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on this Tuesday in the Sports Grid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish here as we are getting ready for a loaded slate of games here tonight. And we've got a couple coming up actually this hour with the Dodgers and the Phillies. Game 2 of their set there with the Phillies and the Bats unloading last night to take Game 1. Terrible spot for the Dodgers coming off a doubleheader on Sunday against the Yankees, Sunday Night Baseball. Not shocked with what we got there last night. Tonight, different story, maybe. Robleski taking on Zach Wheeler. And then we've got the other team, the team that won the American League pennant a year ago. And boy, oh boy, you want to talk about regression. Now, the Dodgers, of course, met Toronto in the World Series a year ago. I believe the numbers, Craig, that we have heard, the most watched World Series ever or in the last, couple of decades. While the Dodgers don't seem to have any sort of hangover, Toronto, not so much. And a big reason of that is, Tampa Bay right now. Again, Tampa like a bad rash. You just can't get rid of them. Here, every time you think they're going to go away, they don't go away. And, yeah, they are sitting with, 57 wins here on the season? I mean, what happened to Toronto? Is it just that it was a one-time deal? That was it. It was a great season. Fell a little short. You lose Bichette. Bieber gets hurt again. Gausman's not the same pitcher. What's going on with Toronto right now?
Yeah, look, offense is down around the league, and batting 300 is gone. And now if you're hitting 250, you're great. And those things are true, but you can't simplify it easy enough by just taking a look at their lineup and saying that Guerrero's had an awful year and Springer's had an awful year. I mean, just look at the year that those two guys had 2 years ago versus the year that they had this year, because then you could say, well, if those guys weren't hitting, did they get anything? The answer is yes, and Dylan Cease has been amazing, and he could potentially even win the Cy Young. So I just think it's one of those things where a lot of players are just not playing as well as they did a year ago. I don't know that the Bichette thing is a huge factor there. The back end of their rotation hasn't been very good. The bullpen also hasn't been very good. And as I mentioned, their offense has taken a big step back. But the Blue Jays were not blowing anybody away at this time last year. They all of a sudden got hot in August and September and started winning. I really don't anticipate that happening, but I think the big misnomer is that the Blue Jays play in like some small market. I mean, the Rogers in that Toronto market is incredible, and they can't just punt the team in the season, Joe. Like they can't just send everybody off. I think they're going to try and fight till the end. So I expect the Blue Jays to try and hang in there. I don't like their team, and it's a shame. They were so close last year to winning that World Series, and they came up short. But I don't see it. They and the Padres are the two teams that had good years last year that have taken a step back, that I watch them play and I wonder and say to myself, are we going to see them playing in the postseason in October? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, and the Blue Jays now, after that 7-1 loss last night, they've lost 5 of their last 6. They're last in the American League East. They're 5.5 games back of that last wild card spot. 5 teams ahead of them that you saw on that list. So the postseason hopes are fading, and they're fading rather quickly here, Greg, which I thought they'd take a step back, but this is when Guerrero's only got 5 or 6 home runs by the time we hit middle of July. There's something going on here with the Blue Jays. The Rays, while guys like Rasmussen, although his last couple of starts looks like he's kind of hit that middle of the season wall there. He's given up 11 earned in 7 1/3. That was against the Yankees and the Astros. The Blue Jays are not hitting like those two teams. So this could be the right place at the right time. But the Rays, I mean, the home road splits are ridiculous, Greg. When you look at what the Rays do on the road versus what they do at the Trop, it's kind of crazy considering they spent the entire year last year basically on the road.
And maybe that's why they didn't make it last year, because of that. Yeah. Because this year they've been almost unbeatable there, and every little trade they make seems to, most of them seem to work out in their factor, in their favor. Excuse me. Like the one that didn't in the last few years is Christopher Sanchez. People don't realize that he was on Tampa Bay and they traded him to Philadelphia. But look, they made that trade. They traded Taj Bradley in the offseason. Everyone's like, what are you doing? Why are you trading him? They get Griffin Jacks. Like, for what? A reliever? All of a sudden, Griffin Jacks is now in the starting rotation for Tampa Bay. You mentioned Rasmussen. He's been very good for them. Nick Martinez, with all of the free agent busts there are this season, that guy's been great for Tampa Bay this year. Their closer, no one's ever heard of going into this year. He made the All-Star team, and Baker, he throws a fastball and a changeup, and it looks like it's coming in exactly the same speed. And they play that little small ball at the trop. It seems like they're bunting the ball down or hitting it on the ground, beating out balls to first base. And then when they go on the road, they're not the same team. I mean, that's as clear as day. I think they have one of the most home wins in baseball and have one of the worst road records. So it'll be very important, I think, Joe, for them to win that division, because if they do, that will get them an American League Division Series potentially, or even a wild card series at home and in the Trop. And I would not bet against them in a 5-game series where they have 3 home games there. I think they got a good shot to advance.
Now, once again, bullpen phenomenal for them this year. I mean, they're getting big starts out of Jax, trying to convert him from the bullpen into the rotation. But Nick Martinez, I'm with you, man. I don't think anybody saw that coming. He has been tremendous for them. Top of that lineup is great. And Toronto and Gausman, listen, he's been going through it this year. He's not what he once was. They're going to have their hands full here tonight. Pretty much even money across the board. I mean, 110 on both sides, seeing that total at 7.5. And if it ain't, if it ain't broke, Greg, I don't feel like fixing it. It doesn't feel like Tampa Bay is broke here in any way, shape, or form. And then, of course, you do have some teams that are broke. And the Royals, outside of the last couple of weeks since the All-Star break where they finally decided to start hitting the ball, great win last night, but the Giants are also a mess. Kauffman Stadium's another one of these stadiums, Greg, we'll talk about. They moved in all the dimensions to try to get more runs scored, and that might be for the other team because the Royals and Bobby Witt Jr., by the way, not in the lineup here tonight. Back spasms again. Not good news for the Royals. You want to talk about a seller. Both these teams here tonight, Giants and Royals, likely going to be sellers when it comes down to it. We'll take a look at that game coming up here as Tyler Mahle, everyone's favorite starting pitcher, is on the mound for the Giants. My goodness. More Major League Baseball coming up on Game Time Decisions. welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on this Tuesday on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish as we are getting ready for a big slate of baseball here tonight. A couple of games already postponed there. We'll have doubleheaders tomorrow with the Yankees and Pirates, as well as the Orioles and the Red Sox. But we mentioned, Craig, of course, two teams and really the one game that's on the board that doesn't have two teams that might actually, or at least one of the two teams playing for something. The Giants at the Royals, and the Royals won. I mean, you want to talk about laughable. The Royals won on a walk-off squeeze bunt last night, Craig. When is the last time that you've seen that or anybody actually even attempt that? So another low-scoring game, two offenses that just can't be trusted at this particular point to score enough runs. 95 degrees at Kauffman Stadium. They turned, they kind of adjusted the dimensions in that park to cater to maybe some more home runs. But, I mean, two teams that I first won the 4 wins because that I don't care who's pitching, no?
Yeah, this is that game that you could give me Cabo Verde against Uruguay. I think I'd rather watch that one.
It feels
this is an awful game. This is an awful game. And look, the Royals are disappointing, of course, but Joe, the Giants franchise is in a very strange state here. And I know a few years ago they ended up winning 100 games and they ended up winning the division somehow. I know they didn't win the World Series that year, but people forget the Giants. I think it was 2021 or 2. The Giants ended up winning over 100 games. But they can't seem to get things figured out. Like, they brought in, I mean, Joe, Farhan Zaidi was very integral in what the Dodgers were doing. He could not get that fixed. I mean, think about that. And he was doing what he was doing with Andrew Friedman in LA. He couldn't get it fixed with the Giants. And so they bring in Buster Posey because all of a sudden they think, all right, well, look, maybe, and not that analytics isn't the way to go, but, Buster Posey, he's a team captain, he's a leader, maybe this, and Joe, it has not gone well for him either. Players don't want to sign in San Francisco. They don't. The only way that they can get guys to play there is trading for them, as we saw with Devers, and then they handed him that contract. By the way, Devers has been really good, I want to say, the last few weeks, too. If people have not been paying attention, he is now putting together a really good season. But the truth is that once they did that, that sort of gave them the payroll they had, and they're like, all right, we got to stop. Well, that's not good enough. Giants are in an odd position, having basically, Joe, almost endless money to spend in a very big market, can't get players to go. What happens when you can't get players to go there? You end up getting players that you didn't want in the first place. Now that you're second and third options, how does that usually work out? Not very good. So I'm hopeful that city and that team get it worked out eventually. And probably secretly, Joe, I'm guessing that in the CBA meetings, they're like, yeah, give us the cap on the floor because we're never going to be able to beat the Dodgers if this is the way this is going to go forever. I mean, you put LA versus San Francisco, they're going to pick LA almost every single time. So it's tough, man. I right now is not a good time to be a Giants fan. Let's just put it that way.
No, you'd think they would have this like in years past where they'd have this great rotation of pitchers because it's one of the best pitchers ballparks in all of Major League Baseball at the Oracle. And they can't get it going there. It's crazy to have just 42 wins, the Giants. In Kansas City, they got a couple of decent starters. Reagan gets hurt. Their bullpen is absolute trash. And then Bobby Witt Jr. now gets hurt, and we'll see if he's got a trip to the IL anytime soon. But how was that manager hiring, by the way? Tony Vitello leaves Tennessee and the college ranks to come to the pros. I don't know.
You know what's funny? You brought up a good point that I think is worth mentioning. I think that just the average baseball fan that's not doing things like we're doing here, Joe, they probably, if you said that great pitching, they probably could roll off Bumgarner, Kane, Lincecum, Romo. Like, I think they know all those guys. But then if you asked, okay, now give me a Giants pitcher in the last 10 years, you probably couldn't do it. Maybe Webb, maybe Webb. But beyond, I mean, think about that. And this is going back to what, 2012, 13, that long ago? that they haven't had anything, viable there. And that's kind of sad, man.
I agree.
that we remember all those pitchers on those teams.
It's such a great pitcher's park. And they always had that roster and that flow of great starting pitcher, great arms, and they've had nothing here. And you can't get anybody to want to go play there and want to hit in that ballpark, which is another big problem here. So Giants are going to have their work cut out for them, but plenty of other games out on the West Coast, little later start games here tonight. We'll go over. You want to talk about a postseason hangover. Has anybody seen the Seattle Mariners? Are they going to win any games this time of year? Game Time Decisions continues on the grid. All right, welcome in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network, and it is about that time where got to make some decisions here. Full slate of games coming up here tonight. Major League Baseball. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. I think we do have some WNBA action before the All-Star break, and I believe that game will be on Saturday. But in Major League Baseball, it was interesting, Craig. We had mentioned Vitello there, the Giants' new head coach. And, these days, and we've all known, I want to give a ton of credit to the managers these days in Major League Baseball are not exactly what they used to be 20 some odd years ago. But there are some guys that are doing a fantastic job. And you mentioned it earlier. We said 14-game winning streak. Chad Tracy comes in, impossible spot. They fire everybody. He's 10-1 right now to win Manager of the Year. Kevin Cash again with Tampa is plus 250 to win Manager. And what they're doing with the White Sox with Will Venable, who most people, if they ran him over in the road, would know who he was, idea. Craig. But I didn't see the White Sox being this good either. I mean, is in the American League, is it his award at this point?
Yeah. I mean, it usually goes to a team that is a big surprise, and if not, they just go to the old reliables. Like in the NL, it would be Murphy. In the AL, it would be Cash. I don't think Venable's a lock at all. I think the White Sox would have to win probably like 85, 86 games to lock that in. Like, I don't think a 79 win White Sox team does it. And then I think it may end up going to Cash. So I still think that there's a way to go in that one too. But, to your point, with the managers, it's so crazy, Joe. I was looking at this because somebody was arguing with me on social media, which they like to do about managers. Did you know that all of the managers in the National League, 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23, are no longer with the current teams that they won manager of the year with? Not just managing, one manager of the year. So it just tells you, you're right. The landscape has completely changed. There's a few guys out there that you can count on maybe to win this award every year. You named them: Murphy in the NL, Cash in the AL. Council's very highly paid. He was great with Milwaukee. You assume he's pretty good with the Cubs. Francona is a Hall of Fame manager, no matter which way you slice it. Dave Roberts. And then after that, to win this award, what you got to do is you have to have a win total on FanDuel of 60, and you win 80, and then you win the award. Other than that, it's going to be the guy who wins the division. And so I still think for me in the American League, it's going to end up being Cash on Tampa Bay. That would be my guess, because the White Sox would have to win a ton. The NL, to me, I don't know why he's not getting talked about enough. I find it fascinating. Ali Marmol on the Cardinals, they had no expectations whatsoever, and he's not first or second or even third on the odds. What if the Cardinals were to sneak in and get that wild card in the postseason? That was an interesting name that I saw there.
I agree. And listen, I'll say it. I think Clayton McCullough in Miami has done it, and he's the second favorite choice. Mattingly, does it matter if you didn't start the year? Because Mattingly is the favorite right now to win the National League MVP, the National League, Manager of the Year. Veteran team, they were going nowhere quickly. Mattingly comes in now. All of a sudden, Philadelphia with not only a good shot of overtaking Atlanta, but winning the National League East. But I think it's those two guys. The market thinks it's those two guys. Murphy, yes. I think Walt Weiss, if he would have maintained what they were doing in April and May, would be there for Atlanta, but kind of hard to do it there. But Mattingly, maybe the first thing, I believe his son is the assistant GM.
He is.
I don't even know if people realize that, right, Greg?
He is. Yeah, Preston Mattingly is. Yeah, I think, look, I mean, these odds haven't really adjusted, but for Clayton McCullough to win it, and I'm not trying to be funny here, I'm being real, the Marlins are going to have to win a game at some point here. They've lost 7 games in a row. So for him to win it, they have to start winning some games. It may very well be the team that surprises to get into that third wild card spot, Joe. If it's St. Louis, maybe it's Marmol. If it's the Marlins, maybe it is McCullough. If it is the Pirates, is Don Kelly potentially the guy? Is Don Kelly maybe the manager of the year? I mean, I think that's very much in play too. But the problem is that they're just so bored with giving the award to Pat Murphy, which really isn't right. When you think about it, isn't Pat Murphy the best manager in the NL? Probably, right? But like, they're bored just giving him the award every year.
Yeah, listen, I think the Mattingly, it will resonate with people, especially the ones that vote. Now, who votes for the managers? Is it still the press?
The
Is
writers?
it still the media?
Yeah.
The writers still do. Okay, so the writers are doing that. Yeah, he's a guy that they'll look at and they'll want to try to figure out a reason to do. Reasonable price right now. But I think your point with Marmol there in St. Louis, because I thought you were big on St. Louis just from an organizational standpoint. That
I am,
you
but this
can't
year
discount them.
Yeah, no, but I thought Chaim Bloom was coming in to tear it down, Joe. I thought he was coming in to like build the Tampa Bay model or the Boston model when he drafted all those guys like Roman Anthony and got Rafaela in international free agency. I thought that's what Bloom was coming in to do. I think Bloom was probably surprised, Joe. Like, I think he's probably like, wait a second here. Okay, yeah, like, all right, if we're this good, then we have to put our foot down. But I think with the Cardinals, the most fascinating thing is if you look on FanDuel and DraftKings and everyone else, they're still not being respected at all. Everyone still thinks
it's crazy.
The odds makers that they're going to fall, and they may end up losing 85 games. You know, it's very possible. But all of the other teams have better odds than them, essentially. FanGraphs, I think, puts their odds right around Arizona's and Pittsburgh to make the playoffs. Miami had the best odds of all of those three.
Yes.
But after that losing streak, now they're back. I think they have like a 21% chance on FanGraphs to get that wild card spot.
If they had a bullpen and this is a fascinating hire with Washington. Blake Butera, the manager, who looks about 12 years old, and I think that is the youngest coaching staff in Major League Baseball, I believe. Everyone, all the managers and coaches on that team feel like they're 12 years old. But Washington this year, I mean, they're winning with guys named, Miles Mikolas here, right? Griffin, guys that nobody heard of. This is a potent lineup that's in Colorado here tonight, taking on a Rockies team that, once again, I think one of the worst records in Major League Baseball. But believe it or not, Craig, start of the year, we talked about it. The market said Washington was going to be the worst team in Major League Baseball. They're a game over 500, and they're one of the best teams and most profitable teams on the road this year. And that's with one of the worst bullpens in Major League Baseball. So it's kind of hard not to look at this. Washington on the road, minus 110. Yeah, give me that lineup any day here at this point.
A lot of runs probably coming here. The only thing that's positive about the Rockies is that no matter how bad they are, they're always pretty good at home. So generally, they do play much better. They're going to have the worst road record in baseball again this season, but their home record will be better. I think they're also going to fly over their season win total, Joe, is in the 50s. I think they're going to win 60-something for sure. So that's a positive for them. But look, it's still a disaster there as far as the pitching is concerned. It doesn't matter who ends up going there. The guy who's pitching tonight, Lorenzen, why did he go to Colorado? Oof. There's only one reason. It was the money. I think he got $7 or $8 million. You have to pay these guys stupid money to go play. And I don't think Lorenzen's going to look back and regret it, because he's going to look at his bank account and see all those zeros. But his ERA, I believe, is 6 on the season. So you know what you're getting when you end up pitching there.
And Washington, good chance they're going to score some runs. They won last night, 7-3. Total is 13 tonight. Wind blowing out there. Not like they need it there. The
I don't even think they need
in
wind.
the 90s. I don't need wind. You can cough, and the ball is flowing at 13. It's going out. And listen, there's a pretty good rookie on the Marlins, but there's a pretty good rookie first baseman on Colorado, too, with TJ Rumfeld, who's having a heck of a year, this kid. Hitting almost 300, 13 home runs, 51 ribbies. This is a kid I think's got a very bright future, which means he'll likely be a Dodger in the very near future at some particular point. All right, we'll run down the rest of the West Coast games for you as Game Time decisions get you ready for a big night here in Major League Baseball on the Grid. All right, welcome back in. Here we go. Game time decisions on the SportsGrid network and decisions. It is about that time we've got to make as Major League Baseball set to get underway here tonight. In fact, Phillies and Dodgers at Citizens Bank Park being delayed right now. Not a shock. We told you 80% chance of rain in that one. Wheeler was scheduled for the Phillies versus Robleski, but we'll see how that goes. We've already got 2 games canceled. Doubleheaders tomorrow for the Red Sox and the O's, as well as the Yankees and the Pirates. Twins and Guardians underway. No score in that one. But I mentioned earlier, Craig, tonight, one of the, we said, hey, listen, Miz, yes, Cy Young Award for the National League, should be considered the favorite. You and I both think, well, there's still a lot that can happen between now and the end of the year. And one of the guys, I mean, this kid Burns for the Reds. What else does he need to do here? He pitches for the Reds in a terrible ballpark for pitching, and yet he's 11-1 on the season. And the kid has been lights out. He's going up against Louis Castillo there and Seattle and the Mariners at T-Mobile. You want to talk about a pitcher's ballpark. Should they be the favorite or should they be the underdog here?
Seattle really has had a hard time scoring again. I saw them here in Miami, and it was, embarrassing. I mean, they didn't have Julio Rodriguez in the lineup, but they still couldn't hit at all. Cal Raleigh finally came alive. Maybe this is the beginning. I mean, Raleigh last night had his best game, I think, of the year, finally. Castillo actually used to play on the Reds. The interesting part about Burns, Joe, and he's the one pitcher that I think it's fair to ask, what if the Reds, Joe, are out of this thing in September and Burns hits an innings limit? What would happen there? So he's not somebody that I would back to win that award. I would be afraid of that because, 140 innings, can you win the Cy Young with 140, 150? I don't even know that he would get there. So he's not on my list. Like my Cy Young, and by the way, Cincinnati probably should be light favorites tonight, but the game is in Seattle. For Cy Young, right. Look, you got to acknowledge Miz should be the favorite. I'm a little concerned. So Sanchez goes on my list, but I think the sneakiest name of all is Chris Sale. I mean, if Chris Sale keeps on winning, and Chris Sale throws 200 innings this year, and the Braves end up winning it, and this guy is just, why is nobody even talking about him? I guess because he's boring, because he's just been around and he's older. But beyond that, his numbers are just as good as any of these other guys. Ohtani's out of the mix. The only name other than that I was looking down the list last night, Joe, that I just wanted to bring up was the hottest pitcher going right now, and I think I'd even put him ahead of Burns, and that's Yamamoto. Because now that Ohtani is probably out of the mix for the Cy Young, there's no splitting votes with those pitchers. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Yamamoto threw a 9-inning shutout or one run, whatever he did last time out. You could see him winning a lot down the stretch. I could see him going all the way through to the end of the year. So I think the odds are right, but as you said, there's an opportunity here, I think, to take somebody lower on the board in the month of July that ends up winning it in October.
And are we not, do we think Wheeler's got a shot here? Or do we think Christopher Sanchez is going to steal too many?
Yeah, I think that's why he does not.
Because of Sanchez.
Sanchez had a perfect May. He didn't give up a run in May. No one's ever going to take that away from him. It was one of the best runs for any pitcher in baseball. Wheeler is a potential Hall of Famer, but the man of the hour right now and the guy who's going to pitch game 1 of a postseason for them is going to be Sanchez. I think. I don't think it's going to be Wheeler. So I hope Wheeler doesn't get offended by that, but I do think it's going to be Sanchez. So that's why. Wheeler is a little boring. That's true too. But for my money, it would be Mizorowski at the top. I would have Sanchez right after that, but very close with Chris Sale. And then I would probably bump Yamamoto up a lot. I really think a huge final 2 months are coming for him. I think his odds are way too low.
You mentioned earlier, too. I mean, we were saying a month ago, Sonny Gray would have been probably wearing a different uniform. But now with a 14-game winning streak under their belt, Boston, Sonny Gray in the American League Cy Young came out of nowhere also. Now, still a long shot. But right now, it's as if the market is pricing Cam Schlittler and Dylan Cease, and don't anybody else apply here. And while both have been tremendous, is Sonny Gray flying under the radar, especially if Boston continues their winning ways and comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden is fighting for an American League, pennant?
Definitely, but I still don't see him passing Cease. I could see Cease passing Schlittler easily, but I don't see. I think Cease is going the distance here and has a great shot. Schlittler, my concern is the same as it was back earlier in the year. We've never seen this guy throw a lot of innings, so this is the same as Burns.
Yes.
So we're in that same bucket here. What's going to happen to him in 3 weeks, Joe? I have no idea. You have no idea. We don't know. He's never done it. A good example of that, I'll just allude to it here, is my guy here in Miami, Max Meyer, one of the 5 best pitchers probably in the National League this season. Had some sort of neck issue. Honestly, Joe, I got no more information on that other than he's on the IL and I don't know when he's going to come back. It's the most innings he's ever thrown. And is it a coincidence that popped up here now? I don't know the answer to that, but don't be surprised by that when you see guys going far above their career norms. And we're about to hit that for a lot of players this year. So that's why Sale in the NL is so boring and Sonny Gray is so boring in the AL. But those are guys that have pitched 200 innings in big league seasons.
I tell you, there is a name out on the market, and I think he's been phenomenal. I love these guys that fly under the radar on bad teams because the public never bets them or usually bets against the team, and there's always value on them. But he has been lights out, and I think he would make a fantastic addition to Atlanta. You know what I mean? Somebody along those lines. And that's Reed Detmers with the Angels, the lefty. I mean, Craig, he's striking out 27% of the hitters he's facing, and he doesn't walk anybody. And he is one of those guys that I could absolutely see being moved. Let's face it. The Angels taking on the Cardinals here tonight, one of the late night games. The Cardinals can't hit anybody. Offensively, one of the worst teams that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. But Reed Detmers is a guy with this Angels team that, call me crazy, I think he'd be a really good addition to some starting rotations.
Yeah, with Detmers, this is an easy one, Joe, because yes, he's going to get traded, but here's how you figure out where he's going to go to. Now you have to go online and check who's got the best farm system, because it's going to be an absolute war to get that guy. Like 20 teams are going to want Reed Detmers right now. So if you don't have a good farm system and you're Houston, when you're sitting out there, you can forget it. You can move on. You're not getting him. So, so who are the teams that have the prospect capital to, because he's probably going to be one of the most valuable starting pitchers traded in the next couple of weeks. You're right.
Under team control for 2 more years. right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network as we look to close out this edition here together. Joe Raineri alongside Craig at Mish as we've got one Major League Baseball game underway, and I believe Minnesota's on the board first right now, 1-0 in the bottom of the first. Parker Messick going for the Guardians. The rookie Rojas going for Minnesota. Minnesota pitching, namely Joe Ryan, got pretty beat up last night. But the Guardians looking to do what they do often, which is win a lot of games when nobody's paying attention. And next thing you know, they're a tough out come the postseason. So that game is underway. The other game still in a delay, and that, of course, is the Phillies and the Dodgers here. But a couple more of these late-night games, Craig, that are coming up here, including Detroit at the Cubs. Peterson versus Valdez right now for Detroit, and the Cubs are minus 115, 116 favorites. It's Peterson pitching, and we've got a total of 9.5, maybe even 10 in some spots here. If you want to talk about a guy not what he once was, I mean, neither of these guys are having a great season here.
No, and, Framber Valdez could be still standing with whatever Detroit decides to do here because no one's going to take him on in the contract they just signed him to, ironically. That's where free agency's at in baseball. Immediately after the signing, nobody wants you anymore when he's on a long-term contract.
It's crazy.
Look, the Cubs, you got to look. I'm not a big Cubs guy. I was talking with Tom Vecchio here last night, Joe. I think the Cubs in the playoffs are a fade this year. I don't really believe strongly in them. I think even if they're hosting games, I'm just not big on them. Too streaky for me. Win 10 in a row, lose 10 in a row. Now, all those things being said, I want to give them a lot of credit because no one in baseball's had more injuries to their starting staff than the Cubs. Everyone down. Steele, Edward Cabrera, one after the next. Nobody, I don't even know who's starting for them. They keep picking up guys off the scrap heap because they got nobody left. They picked up Savali over the weekend, too. But that's a team that I'm very good on to make the postseason because I do think they're going to get those pitchers back next month. But I'm just not a big believer on them going deep into years. And 2 years or 2023, they completely fell apart and fell out of the playoffs. I don't know, man. There's just something always about those Cubs that, I think they'll get there this year. I think they'll get there. But, I can close my eyes and dream a little bit about a first-round series where, let's just for the sake of it, let's throw Arizona. Like Arizona somehow gets in, they go to Chicago in the first round, and then Arizona wipes them, and that's the end of the Cubs. I just kind of feel like that's going down this year.
Feels like that's exactly what it's going to be, where expectations through the roof, and then all of a sudden, not great here. But a lot of baseball across the board. Now we got a couple of double headers tomorrow here, Craig, with Boston. Again, that 14-game winning streak would have been nice to get that game in here tonight, but now it's going to be a doubleheader for tomorrow. And the Yankees, same thing. They just had a great game finally offensively where they put it together, and now they get rained out. Listen, Pittsburgh's been crushing the ball here. Kind of hard to look at, I think, unders in either one of those doubleheaders tomorrow, no?
Yeah, my trend with double headers is just watch the first game and then take the team first 5 in the game after who lost. Seems like those teams always get off to a good start after losing the first game. Doesn't always mean they win. They usually do, by the way. I think 60 or 65% of teams that lose the first game end up winning the second. But that being said, it's the first 5 to me is the direction that I would go. But I got to tell you, forget Yankees Pirates here for a minute, Joe. If the Red Sox win 2 games tomorrow, look out. Ooh. I mean, then they're chasing some history at that point, because I would not predict that. I would predict Baltimore takes a game tomorrow.
That is going to be extremely interesting, to say the least. They are looking forward to the doubleheader tomorrow. We've got much more Major League Baseball coming up for you here tonight. In fact, another edition of In-Game Live is coming up. Gabe Morency, Kevin Walsh, they will get you covered here for all the in-game stuff. Greg and I will be back again tomorrow. And my favorite play here tonight, Greg, I got to tell you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I a total of 13. I don't care who they throw out there. I like the bats of Washington more than I like the bats of Colorado.
Okay.
It feels like at that price, one of the best teams, I believe, on the road right now is what Washington is on the season here. I don't care who they throw. 30-19 on the road, Greg. Third best road
Incredible.
record
Wow.
in Major League Baseball there. Give me the Nats to get it done here tonight. And also give me Yordan Alvarez for 2 or more home runs tonight. Would you be open to that? No? Okay, no, never mind then. We'll have more for you. Don't go anywhere there. In-game live is coming your way. Greg and I'll see you tomorrow for more Game Time decisions.